Good afternoon and welcome to this week's episode of Safety Culture Solutions, brought to you by Safety Culture Strategies. I'm Mike Kinney, your host, and I think you're kind of getting a sense of our tempo each week now. We reach out across the world literally now. We have international participation, and we talk about different attributes of a positive safety culture. And obviously there's a bunch of them. So always thrilled to get different perspectives, including our guests today. Do me a favor, reach out to YouTube and you like us and scrub us and share us. Let everybody else know what's going on. And if you're interested in being on the show, we'll have contact information towards the end of this week's episode. This week, we are really pleased to have with us Mr. Craig Perkins. And he brings a unique perspective to the whole safety profession. The foundation of his career is in operational management, and he's dedicated most of the last decade to supporting safety with a little bit of human resources, HR thrown in at McMaster-Carr. Craig chose to prioritize pursuit of his MBA over an initial pursuit of the CSP, recognizing the importance of understanding, being able to articulate the value safety brings to an organization, especially when you're talking with senior management. He has experience implementing and evolving ergonomics, powered industrial trucks or PITs, and other programs using motivational, behavior-based, and leadership principles to ensure effectiveness. Collectively, he brings a fresh perspective to engaging senior management in support of achieving a positive safety culture. Craig is truly passionate about the betterment of those working at McMaster-Carr and looks forward to sharing his experience with others and our viewers today. Craig, welcome to the show, sir. How are we doing today?
Doing great. I'm really excited to be on here. Happy to have a nice conversation today.
You bet. And you and I chatted before, and I kind of grew up originally kind of like a mechanical designer, and one of my favorite resource books to go to was that giant, thick McMaster-Carr catalog. It's kind of like a Home Depot focus, much more on industry and all the cool parts and stuff that you need for different companies. Is that a good way to kind of summarize you guys?
It's a good way to say it. We take a lot of pride in the fact that we're a great resource for engineers and other industrial professionals. Universities and other organizations really leverage information and just have fun perusing the catalog from what I've certainly gathered. I think I'd mentioned in one of our discussions, one of the funniest things when I joined the company and I'd go out and tell people what I do and who I work for, the response is either, what'd you say, you work for MasterCard? What's that place? Or the other is, oh my gosh, this is the most amazing company for, from an offering standpoint or customer service. And it leads to a fun conversation.
Yeah, and I'm definitely in that option B group, because if I ran my calculator because I couldn't count all the pages. I think you're north of 500,000 items now, like a bunch. Wow.
So it's really neat. You continue to see just more needs from our customers and see how their needs are evolving and how we can best meet what their needs are and even predict future needs that are coming up throughout the industry.
That's amazing. You got obviously a bunch of people in the organization, and you've taken, I think, an innovative approach on your focus on safety, because, okay, don't get me wrong, viewers, safety by definition is important. That's part of our DNA, a lot of the viewers on the podcast. But Craig, you've also got, I think, keen appreciation on how you address being able to, I don't want to insult anybody, essentially being able to effectively communicate with the senior team.
Yeah, getting into the safety profession wasn't necessarily something I had, if you asked me maybe 20 years ago, I don't know necessarily if that would have been something that I would list it off. It was actually kind of funny when I was talking to my parents when the opportunity came about. I was a active kid, we'll put it that way, and played football, had plenty of head injuries, all that fun stuff. And my mom was like, wait, do they know what they're doing? But what was really exciting was taking some of the experience I had in operations, some of the experience and leadership opportunities, and being able to apply that. A lot of it is relationship based, and trying to find ways to use the passion for the folks that you're working shoulder to shoulder with every day, and being representative of them, and really trying to do what's right and what's helpful both by the folks doing the work as well as the organization. And it's a really unique opportunity.
Yeah. So I always love when the parents go, "Are you sure you want to do?" So we always have a few things we like to talk about in general about the world of safety culture. And I've told people, I says, you have attrition there, you have employee engagement, you have employee accountability, and how's leadership out there on the front end, making sure everybody understands where they want to go. So that's goals and visions and the mission statements and the pieces and the parts. So from your perspective, because you've been in this quite a while, what's some positive attributes that leadership needs to focus on to ensure they can have a positive safety culture?
Sure. So I think, the number one thing, and I know this can be, especially now, and I think in a good way, but it can be generalized a bit, is listening. I think that you can understand what opportunities there are to improve just by listening. What are folks talking about? What are the concerns? And active listening, meaning I'm not just going to listen and write down what you're saying, but actually listening and understanding what ultimately is the root cause. What's the root of the issue, and digging into seeing what opportunities exist. There are times, I think a crucial point or piece of credibility in leadership is to show that you're responsive and that you're able to follow up. So, having that method to say, I'm listening to you. I'm going to agree with you. This is what I'm digesting from this conversation is the root of the issue. And here are the actions I'm going to take. You take those actions, and sometimes the response back, they're kind of circling back, is, we're not going to pursue that right now. It doesn't mesh well with whatever our organizational priorities are, but here's why. And giving that context helps. Sometimes, though, there's some real opportunity, or a lot of times. So I think the number one piece is being a good listener. The next thing, and I know you talk a lot about it in your book, Mike, but is having a presence and appreciation for the role and for what folks are doing. And, sometimes you have the opportunity to be able to get your hands dirty and literally do the job and see and feel and touch and really understand what the task entails. Sometimes it's not feasible based on what role you might be in, but I think that's where those relationships and really understanding who are your go-to people, who are the people that you can really rely on, that are going to give you an honest answer, who you can go to and say, I've got this idea, and they're going to look at you and say, don't do that. That's not going to go well. And they're going to continue to have those conversations. And
yes,
gosh, if any of those people one day listen to this podcast, they know exactly who they are, and they're probably going to walk in the next day, they watch it and they'll say, hey, thanks for calling me out. I know you didn't say my name. But those are two of the most significant.
And that's really on target. And the phrase I know you and I talked about before, I call them like the quiet, or like the unofficial leaders, the unofficial champions, and they're scattered throughout the organization. And that's who the balance of what I call the task level people, the people that are critical to the success of any company, that day-to-day interaction. That's who they go to. Say, where are we going? What do you think? Okay, Craig just came by one day, say, should we be listening? Right? So when you get those people engaged, and then they even get more empowered, and then when you're really good at this, as a lot of companies are starting to get there, everybody starts becoming a champion for safety.
Yeah, yep. Without a doubt, one of the, there was a really, really interesting presentation. I think it was DECRA did a number of years ago. I want to say it was at a behavioral safety conference, and they talked about the observations that they aggregated, and the trends that they looked at, and they talked about coach or advocate, observer turnover, and where the benefits are. And there were a lot of attributes that were interesting, but one of the more important takeaways was, and this is kind of common sense, but it was interesting just to hear this, even from a statistical standpoint, that the more people that you have that are former coaches or former advocates or former safety council people, however you want to put it, the more advocates you're going to have, and the more perspective that you have, and that's certainly important and valuable.
Absolutely correct. One thing I want to touch on, because I know it's one area that you've done a lot of work in, is ergonomics and what's going on, musculoskeletal challenges, and there's a lot of hands-on tasks. Amazon recently, they're looking to see, well, can they do some job rotations to reduce some of those potentials. So is there some thoughts you have that could share with our viewers, just generally in ergonomics, what have you found that's kind of working and things you still want to improve on or things that are a success?
I think this is such an important topic, both because of the last year of what COVID has done to e-commerce and the amount of emphasis that, companies have put on some of those large, behemoths that are distributing millions of packages probably in a day. The amount of work, the amount of volume that is now in this cardboard package, and that also is non-uniform too. Before, if you think of a warehouse or assembly line, you think of, I've got these 3 SKUs and I'm putting them in these boxes. It's very uniform. Well, now it's all over the place as far as the permutations of items and things like that. And so while I'm sure the technology to be able to automate is going to continue to evolve and adapt to those needs, what it comes down to is a lot of companies need people to be able to handle some of these certain tasks. And, certainly you want to try to focus especially on automating we'll call it the items, where human intervention aren't necessary, or the tasks where human intervention aren't necessarily adding value, or the things that are really repetitious or overly redundant. But from an ergonomics perspective, I think there's a lot of areas that there is opportunity. There are tremendous partners that you can find out there that are truly experts in ergonomics. There are some corporations that actually have, they have ergonomists that are working for them to build an assembly line for the new F-150 that's coming down the road, to assemble that. But then there are some that you can partner with. One thing that we've found really valuable is partnerships with universities. Tremendous research opportunity. Ohio State has been a fantastic partner of ours. They've both from an educational standpoint and in other ways. So those are more, so I guess the more tangible answers to your question. From a general cultural standpoint, certainly having coaches, having advocates, and investing in their education, in their background and experience. What's remarkable is when you ask folks, and I know sort of you describe it as task level folks. When you ask folks to have this opportunity to do something a little bit more than their day-to-day job, at times it may seem like a burden, but really what it is a terrific opportunity to be able to demonstrate your knowledge and your mastery. One of my favorite motivational books that talks about intrinsic motivation is Daniel Pink's Drive. And he talks about autonomy, mastery, and purpose as being the 3 key components or key traits of an individual who's in turn intrinsically motivated. And when you're able to try to figure out what makes an individual tick, that's really where they're motivated to do things like become a coach and really contribute in that way.
Exactly. And the beauty of ergo programs, essentially any process improvements, it's to me yet another opportunity for leadership throughout the organization to be engaged with those task level people, and the task level, he's more or she not more than just a picture in the newsletter. And usually those leadership, they walk away from that task going, man, there's a lot of unique work going on here, and these people have amazing skill sets. And in this case, now you've got them further engaged. What's some different ways we can further enhance our ergo programs? We're going to take a short break. We got to run a commercial. We'll be right back. We're far from done talking with Mr. Craig Perkins, McMaster-Carr. Stand by.
Safety Culture Strategies provides world-class safety culture and safety program management consultative services for clients throughout the United States. Whether your company is pursuing Voluntary Protection Program STAR designation, ISO 45001 certification, or considering a comprehensive review of your current safety programs and processes, Safety Culture Strategies brings hands-on experience combined with a unique perspective that readily translates from senior senior management to task-level personnel. This collective skill set provides you with a very insightful health check of your overall safety management system that can also assist with reducing injuries and attrition, as well as increasing profitability. Safety Culture Strategies is also certified to provide Ziegler Institute employee engagement training and leadership coaching. When combined with established relationships with federal and state regulators, Safety Culture Strategies is uniquely positioned to assist the safety culture efforts of any company. For additional information, visit www.scstrat.com or call us at 702-780-1410. After all, every company has a safety culture, but is it the culture you want?
Well, hopefully by now, listening to our different episodes, you're starting to appreciate you really want to have a positive safety culture, and in turn, that's going to provide you all these extra benefits. We got Mr. Craig Perkins with us, McMaster-Carr, one of my favorite catalogs in the world. Yeah, I'm going to still keep waving the flag for you guys. I think it's really, really cool stuff. So from your perspective, and again, you've done a lot of this, is it possible to actually measure the impact of management engagement, especially in a positive safety culture, with the task level people, the individuals turning the wrenches for a living? And if you think it can be measured, what would that look like?
That's a good question. That's the multi-million-dollar question, I guess, in some ways. There are a lot of ways, depending on the safety program that you establish, that you're able to measure it. Certainly surveys are somewhat of a common approach. They have their own challenges that they can be somewhat misleading. There are opportunities too, I think, continuing to challenge whatever structures exist and understanding what is measurable, whether it's information about not only the quantity, but also the quality of the observations that you might be getting, to avoid pencil whipping particularly. If you can also take a look at your coach engagement, and you can really understand a lot from your coach engagement if they're within a department as well, and understand, hey, are they being given opportunities to make these observations that we've committed to, and what types of observations are they making? And I think one of the biggest things, especially early on, that's important is to create the right forum so that you're not necessarily the conduit between the task level folks and management. You're actually creating forums where those discussions can happen. And I think that's really critical in streamlining that. Otherwise, I know sometimes you feel like you're just being ping pong back and forth in some ways. But yeah, there are a lot of ways you can get creative. There are a lot of metrics that you can come up with that are far beyond injuries and vehicle accidents and so on and so forth that can measure whether management's interested and engaged.
So when you mentioned forum, can you give me a little bit more insight on that? 'Cause I kind of like the sound of that, to be candid.
Sure. So, it's interesting. One approach that you can take is that you're having discussions, as a safety manager, you're a member of management oftentimes, or safety representative. And you could have discussions with management that might be about, we'll call it high level trends or observations you've made, findings of inspections. And then you could have conversations potentially with your task level folks that are different representatives for their groups. Good. And then you're at times passing along sentiments that are happening between the two of them. And really where the opportunity is to say, let's have these conversations together. It makes you a lot more productive, to be completely honest. But also, it in some ways forces some of the engagement in management. Yes. But I think what's after I hate using the word force, but after that's happened, I think it's helped to break the seal to say, wow, like, these are really powerful conversations. There's some real opportunity to improve here.
Exactly. And a lot of organizations, they'll use their time in the field where the leaders are talking to people at task level. And so when they have those forums or version of that, they'll say, well, how was your weekend? How's your barbecue competition? And that way you start really, to me, you're starting to view each other much more as individuals versus, the management team and the people doing the work.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things that I wanted to bring up that's somewhat of a tangent, but still related is when you talk a little bit about measuring safety engagement and things is I know there's a lot of discussion about defining safety culture, and you had some really nice definitions and some in your book, and it really showed the diversity in definition.
Yes.
One of the more powerful that continues to make me think that I heard, it was probably 5 or 6 years ago. Dr. Tim Ludwig is somebody who I've followed. I've read a lot of his publications, and he's got a great personality. He's a really engaging speaker. If anybody gets a chance to view some of his materials, but he said that, I don't know if this is necessarily his theory, but I know he made the statement. He said, safety culture is what you talk about. And I know that sounds really simple. The first time I heard it, I was like, okay, what is that? That sounds way too simple. What's that all about? But what it started to do was challenge me to say, okay, what kind of conversations are people having about safety?
Beautiful.
For our management team, are we only having conversations? Are they having department announcements when we have an accident or an injury in our department? Am I only talking to our department or our coaches about an accident or injury? Are we, our employees only talking to each other when they're annoyed about having to wear PPE? There's the whole cycle of discussions that are having. Are the discussions we're having in senior management only about the more of the reactive incidents that have happened? And for me, that's really challenged the way that I've looked at safety culture, and that's really driven. We also have discussed this concept of touch points and what types of touch points exist throughout your safety culture, your safety program, safety structure. That how do people experience safety? And some of the cliches in safety where you see the poster up that says safety is our priority, and there's all kinds of postings that you'll see no matter where you go. And sure, there are some opportunities to have passive touch points in safety, but there's also more the active or the very intimate, where it's a one-on-one coaching opportunity.
Yes.
There's the kind of group oriented where it's management's involved and making an announcement. There's a variety of others too. You can really start to add up where it's like, hey, how prevalent is safety being seen, heard, interacted with throughout? And that's one area too, where you can measure that. You can really challenge to say, okay, how many of each category am I achieving throughout my experience?
And those observations are so much on target, Craig, because naturally the value of anything is how are you able to communicate it and articulate it. So when the safety culture is, well, we're hearing from you, Dr. Tim Ludwig, well, it's what you talk about. I think there's some fitment there. Brief example, I was in Northern Ohio many years ago on a big construction site, Craig, and I'm sitting there 6:30 in the morning with my coffee, and their topic for their tailgate safety briefing was ladder safety. So the foreman said, now who's got some tips? And they went around the room in the different craft. They probably had 8 to 10 different tips on how to safely use the ladders. The safety individual is there, but the craft themselves actually led the conversation. I went, okay, they're starting to get it now, because now they own it. Otherwise you're talking, excuse me, you can see that, they're halfway, they're not awake yet, and they're waiting for you to get done. Craig, is there anything else? Well, no, okay, let's go to work. They paused to let those individuals take turns discussing it. Now that took a while to get there, but
Yep. Well, and again, talk about, it is what you talk about. One of my biggest pet peeves that I think everybody falls into is, in like conversations like that, even in training, we spend so much time quoting OSHA regulations or making sure that we're covering all of any possible small example that might come up. And the most fruitful discussions that we often have are, let's apply this. Let's, instead of talking theoretically, let's talk literally. And that's also, that's a huge component of pit training as well. That's very helpful.
Very helpful. I was working with a large company, and they had their own cafeteria. because they would do about 1,000 covers a day, so all the different meals. So that in one of their morning tailgate safety briefings, one of the people who worked in the kitchen would show all the controls they had in place before they could clean an oven. And these ovens were the size of a large bus or something. So it was really fascinating. And so some of the other team members as well, we never even thought about that. So the more you get it personalized, I had the pleasure of helping a company reinvent their OSHA 8-hour refresher, and we included about a 10-minute video that was professionally compiled and probably 15 different things wrong in it. And so we told all their 20-some people, you just became an auditor. And we ran the video and say, let us know if by chance you might see 2 or 3 things wrong. By about the 5th one, they start laughing. But the comments we got back, it really gave them a different perspective. And then when we said, well, when they're being able to observe it in a video, I think they're going to be able to recognize it in the work location as well.
Yep, absolutely.
So this is one of my favorite questions I like to lay on people. So you are very well versed to what you do, sir, exceptionally talented. I appreciate where you're sitting at McMaster-Carr, well deserved. Early in your career, do you recall those 1 to 2 individuals, kind of like a mentor or some version of that kind of assisted in the trajectory of your career and helped you get to where you are today?
Oh man, it's a really good question. I feel like I've benefited from a broad range of people that I've been exposed to professionally and personally, especially being somebody who's been in athletics my whole life. You observe good leadership and you learn from not so good leadership. Early on, certainly learning from my parents, there's no better way to learn than to learn both from their relationship as well as their work ethic and their determination. And I guess we turned out okay. So it must be their methods are all right.
So it doesn't hurt to give mom and dad 2 thumbs up. That's right.
But certainly from really good coaches. I had a coach for football and baseball when I was in the JV varsity level that I think started to expose that leadership is an action word, which is also there's a leadership guru, Tim Ahern, who lived in our town as well and really talked a lot about that, and somebody I looked up to. And one of the more exciting things that I've been able to be exposed to is my there have been a lot of people in our organization that are remarkable listeners, and I've admired their ability to listen, to understand, and then to be able to coordinate a group based on their understanding rather than the loudness of their voice. So it's been a combination. I think the last thing that for me was made leadership exciting was realizing that it is a distinction. It's something there's a lot of theory out there, and whether it's strategic leadership or trait-based leadership or so on and so forth. And I had professors when I got my MBA that really brought that out of me, and this is stuff I read just for fun. I might be crazy, but and I've got a stack of books next to my bed that I can't get through because I keep on buying them.
And you find some new ones.
I can't forget about that.
Real quick before we get the tail end of this, what advice would you give a health and safety professional coming out of college and maybe they're entering the workforce, they've been in it for a few months in that safety and health role, that ES&H role? What kind of thoughts would you want to share with them if you were having coffee together?
Sure. I think the top 3 things is that it's really, really important to understand the business. And again, it's one of those it's becoming a cliche. You don't need to know how to enter everything into the system or every little nickel and dime of what's going on, but understanding the challenges that exist, understanding definitely navigating and getting to know employees to understand the dynamics and the personalities and learn from them. The other one is you've got to be passionate. You've got to be passionate about the people that you're serving. And that was the one thing, Mike, I'm gonna critique you just with one thing. I really did enjoy reading your book, and that was one thing that my big thing with leadership theory is you talk a lot. There's so many different traits in leadership. Is I think you have to be passionate in order to be a leader, in order to be an entrepreneur or anything like that.
Yes.
And you have to be passionate for the people that you're serving, whether you're selling a product or whether it's maybe the company that you're representing or the people that you're representing. That's what makes it fun. That's what makes it something you come back for. And you put up with things like all the craziness here with COVID last year.
You're right on target.
And then
I was like, real quick, some of my clients, they've teased me. And he says, Mike, you're so passionate about this. And mentally to myself, I'm thinking, duh. I mean, if you can't be enthused, you can't bring the passion, makes it a little bit tougher to get throughout the day. But thanks for your thoughts on the book. We're almost done. I tell you, this show always zips by rather quickly. So you've been on stage at a national conference. You've been talking about some of these leadership traits and how you've navigated the trajectory of your safety culture journey and how you're being successful influencing management at McMaster-Carr. When you get done, they get a standing ovation, the balloons and the hats and the confetti go off for you. What's 2 or 3 things you want to hopefully they write down and they take back to their organization and implement?
Sure. I would go back to, a couple of what I just mentioned is, again, understanding the business and taking the time to understand that and really find the people that you can trust and believe in and understand where the company is going and make sure that your initiatives, both from a strategic standpoint, but also from the way you're presenting material, your visuals, make sure it's not in some simple document that isn't up to standards of the company. Again, and make sure that it's clear that safety is a part of the company. It's not some separate distinction. That passion, there's nothing better than passion to make you enjoy what you're doing. And if you're struggling with that passion, go find it. Safety, there's an incredible amount of opportunity in safety. And the last thing is from a cultural standpoint, never allow yourself to be complacent. And especially with safety, safety culture is ever evolving. Those conversations we talked about, safety is what you're talking about. Those are ever evolving, and there's new opportunities, there's new challenges that are presented, and realize that's inevitable. But that, again, going back to the passion, that's what makes it a lot of fun, because there's always opportunity to improve.
And I want to thank Craig for being on here. And just real quickly for all our viewers, you heard a lot about passion. Yep, it's my most recent tattoo on this. Listen to understand what's going on and really understand your business, how you fit in it, how you can support where they're going and align all of it appropriately. I want to thank Craig Perkins, McMaster-Carr. That concludes this week's episode of Safety Culture Solutions, brought to you by Safety Culture Strategies. I'm Mike Kinney. You can reach out to me. I have quite a few different options. You give me on the cell phone. It's on the office this case, 702-780-1410. Website is www.scstrat.com or Mike at, hey, there we go, scstrat.com. Until next time, when we get together, be safe out there and have a great safety culture journey. Bye-bye for now.